Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Allure of the Poor, sponsored by Dracaena Wines. I am your host, Lori, and today we are traveling up north, and I am going to butcher this, and I apologize, but I tried. I promise I tried. So I have my guest today is Fah Sathirapongsasuti.
Close.
Close, all right.
Sathirapongsasuti.
I was so close. I even have I have the I there, and I didn't say it. I cut myself off.
Okay, it is a very long last name. It is 21 letters long.
Wow.
And when I was going to school in the East Coast, they limit their slots to 20. I think the SAT, the bubbling part only has 20 letters. So I always leave off the last I. So
Okay, so I was psychic. I just knew you do that. Does it have meaning? Does it
yes,
mean something?
it is a Thai last name. So I grew up in Bangkok, Thailand. It is a classic sort of immigrant Thai immigrant last name where, actually my father's side is Chinese. So I really should have had the last name Ma, which would have been just one syllable.
Right.
But they encourage immigrants to change last names as a part of assimilation to a Thai last name. But all the shorter last name were all taken. So we had to go with something longer. So Sathirapongsasuti is a concatenation of three words. Sathira means stable, Pong means family, and Sudi means purity. So a stable and pure family. That's us.
All right, well, I like it. I like it. But that is a big difference from going from Ma to that.
Right. That is right.
Yeah, I guess go big or go home. You're gonna make us change it. We're going big.
It's unique. It's unique. I appreciate it for that. Not so much for pronounceability.
But it's definitely a storyline. At the very least, it's a conversation starter, right?
I always love that. Thank you.
And I'm also thinking of like whenever you go to an event or whatever, and you have to put your name on a tag, like
Yeah.
you're writing
I,
really
I usually
finitely.
just say like stick with Fah. It's okay. Like,
Oh, all right. Well, Fal, let's get into. I had such trouble with the name. I didn't even say the winery, but you are the winemaker and owner, right? One of the owners
oh,
of Sunset Cellars. Okay, so tell us about Sunset Cellars, which is in the Sassoon Creek. So
so,
Sassoon
yeah,
Valley, sorry. So tell us about the location, why the winery chose Sassoon, like what is so great about it?
definitely. So Sunset Cellars, this year we celebrate our 25th vintage
Oh
of
my
the.
goodness.
I know. So I'm a second generation. You can't tell by my voice, but I'm not old enough to be owning it for 25 years. But so as a second generation, the first generation the winery started by Doug and Cusco, who lived in the Sunset District of San Francisco. So and they started making the first vintage in their garage in the Sunset District, therefore the name. So in some way, and this started in 1997. In some way, it is kind of a story of that period of time where a lot of pioneers in the industry sort of start their journey as home winemakers, right? So they known some friends who were home winemaking before, got the opportunity to work with some fruit from Sonoma County and borrow their Italian neighbors' press to work with it. So it's a great stories about how they all got started. But then pretty quickly they've started to win some awards from the county fairs and gained the commitment to start at the winery. And 15 years ago, found a site here in Sassoon Valley after having been buying grapes from
Yeah.
Sassoon many years and really gotten to know the growers and the wineries around here and really found that Sassoon Valley is a great home, not only because we are so close to Napa Valley and other sort of the center of gravity for winemaking, but also that the growers here are so friendly that you can work with them even as a tiny wineries that we are. So fast forward to today, 25 years later, 15 years here in Sassoon, We are still fairly small, so about less than 1,000 cases per year. But we make a number of wines, ranging mostly red wines, but a number of white wines as well. So our flagship has been Barbera. We have I'm really, really proud of our flagship Barbera, really long aging, very unique clone that we have, and maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that later. And yeah, and now we have businesses internationally as well in Japan, as well as a tasting room here in Sassoon that you can come visit.
So I went online and I looked at your website, and the first thing that came to my mind is nobody in this picture looks old enough to be drinking wine, never mind making wine. Although I don't know if there's a law against age of making wine. You just can't sample what you're making.
Yeah, I don't think so, actually. I definitely know of friends who like hire or have their children and kids like help make wine,
Right.
right? But yeah, like you say, they can't sample it. I think pouring in the tasting room definitely has more in the age limit.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think so.
that being said, all of us are old enough.
Totally.
Thanks to our Asian genes, probably. I'm from Bangkok, Thailand, and kids, the last name didn't already give it away. Um, I am 37,
Wow.
so I'm much
You
older
do.
than you might
Okay,
think.
so everybody needs to go to YouTube right now and check out this video because Fa does not look 37 years old.
It's a
Fa looks like he could be like a sophomore in college at this point.
right. Like, I got challenged by like a lifeguard one time where I was hanging out in the adult only pool, and it was like 18 and over, and I was like, "Are you 18?" I was like, "Multiply that by two." Thank you very much. Like,
You're like, well, I'll take it. I guess it's all good that I look young. Not a problem. Not a
it's
problem.
the problem sometimes though when with the status that I have, with the career that I have now, people still doubt me, right? It's like, are you even old enough to drink, let alone making good wine?
Mm.
So sometimes it's a problem. When I actually had a customer one time, when I went on and poured wine to them and introduced myself, "Hi, my name is Fah, I'm a winemaker of Sunset," and they were like, "Assistant winemaker? Like, where's the old man in the back?" Like,
Well, I do think that a lot of people have a vision of winemakers as being old men. Right?
Right.
But that is changing rather quickly. That is changing rather quickly for the
So
better, I think.
I
But
think that it's a narrative around it, right? I think there are definitely traditional winemaking, which I totally respect, that the more vintages you have under your belt, the more experience and more things you have seen. So I always listen to people with more experience. But I think there are a narrative and benefit of being naive and young and can do something crazy, and maybe you find something new and interesting.
exactly. You're not so rigored into into a path where you are, oh, you know what, maybe I'll try this or maybe I'll try that. And my guess is that you're more open to when you read something or hear something of some that might be a kind of a newer concept, that you're more willing to give that a go.
Exactly that, and also kind of a new type of varieties as well, right? So I'm always looking forward to working with something weird, something strange. Like this year, I'm going to be working with Daligi, for example. It's a little hard.
Oh, very nice, very nice. And now, do you source all of your food, or you have a state?
We grow some, yeah. So we do have two vineyards that we manage. One is a Barbera, obviously.
Mhm.
Another one is a Cabernet Sauvignon. Um,
Okay.
the rest we have relationship with growers, some as long as 25 years or relationship. Yeah.
And now you're saying that you're a second generation, so you kind of grew up around wine, but that doesn't necessarily mean just because you grow up around wine that you want to get into the wine world. So what about wine made you say, yes, this is the path I want to take for myself. I want to be a winemaker?
Right. Well, actually, like I use the word second generations a bit loosely, not in that like we Duck and Casco are not exactly my relative parents, right? But they are
Mm.
my wine parents. Uh,
Oh, okay.
I've known them for over a decade now. So and they really taught me everything I know about wine, just starting from being a customer and just going there a lot, and they just keep, giving me wine.
Oh, so this is a full circle. You went to the you went and tasted their
Truly.
wine, fell in love with their wine, just kept going back, and you're like, hey, I can go make this wine and then I can have it whenever I want.
More or less. I mean, I think how it goes, right. So I frequent the wineries and I love the co-op, right? So the tasting room has always been a co-op and multiple wineries in the same place. And because they are all small, we can always find the winemakers there pouring the wine behind the bar. And we have a great diversity of wine. Even today, if you come in, we don't just have Cabernet and when you go to Napa, you have like 10 different types of Cab. It's still Cab. We have like Zinfandels, we have Vermentino, we have Albarino, we have Chabono sometimes. It's kind of
Oh,
change all the time as well. So really great place to learn and to expand the palate. And I went on, and I guess just like kids going off to college, I went on and get my certified sommelier from the quartermaster,
oh.
just to sort of feel like I have a complete education in wine in some way. But then I realized I know nothing about winemaking. So I came back and asked if I could be a part of the team. So they included me. And through that, as they were getting ready to retire, we basically step in to carry on the legacy.
All right, so good timing. That works too. So are they still there now? They're just you're kind of the front person now?
Exactly right. So we drive the main operations and the decisions, but I consult with them all the time on big decisions like what blend to put together, how like what wine to make or what when to pick. So I do sort of consult them on important things. And during the middle of harvest, in the middle of fermentations, I get on a call for a daily report and just say it's like this bin is this number, this bin is that number. I'm planning on putting this thing in. What do you think? And I think I've gotten it to a point now where they mostly agree with everything I decide on, and I think that's feels like a pretty good feeling when you gotten to a point where you can align. Because my most important job, I think, as a second generation of winemaker here is to maintain the legacy and keep the style as consistent as possible while like going crazy and doing weird things on my new stuff.
Right, right. You have to have both paths. You have to have both paths. And so when did you actually come to the United States? At what age were you?
Exactly half a lifetime ago. So at the age of 18, yeah.
And what is the wine world like in Thailand? Like,
No,
were you
non-existent.
no, okay.
No, right. My parents are Buddhist. I was born Buddhist. In Buddhism, abstinence is one of the five precepts. So a good portion of the population don't drink or discourage from drinking. And so my first wine memory was in high school when I sneak out to 7-Eleven, grab myself a wine cooler, really cool drinking it.
Yeah.
Right. Now coming full circle, as I now make canned wine that kind of applies kind of like wine cooler, but dry and I think a lot more delicious.
So since you mentioned it, let's talk about this. Now, well, before we get into this one, I have three different Barberas here. So you may be going all crazy and having fun doing things, but I think your heart is Barbera, right?
That's right. Our heart is Barbera, but even within the realm of Barbera, I think we do things with it that might be less conventional, right? Because I think obviously people know Barbera to be a red grape, a red wine. From northern Italy, it tends to be lighter in style, released young, quaffable, something that Italian drinks all the time with any Italian meal, which I love and respect. But one of the things that Sunset has done really well for many, many years, and honestly, one of the things that won us over to be a customer, but also to be like part of the business, is the flagship Barbera, which from a single vineyard in just across the county line near the county line between Solano County and Napa Valley. So it is technically in Napa, but it's sort of on our side of Napa. So that southeast. In case people don't know where Suisun Valley is, it's spelled Suisun. So it's not Suisun, it's Suisun. And it is southeast of Napa Valley, just across the hill from Atlas Peak area. So, and in that little corner, it can be a little bit warmer, especially around where that Barbera vineyard is. The vineyard actually grown to other Bordeaux varietals as well, but that vineyard is also, by the way, the same vineyard that Castello di Amosa make the Barbera from. Mondavi actually put that in many years ago when they did make Barbera. And what we found is that, at least in the few rows that we love to make our wine from, has this unique clone that, I don't know, you ever seen a Barbera cluster, but it can be quite huge. Like some clones of Barbera could be like, a size of a baby's head or something like big. But this particular clone doesn't have a name. We call it nylon clone, because Professor of Davis named nylon has sort of discovered it. It's only about a fist size, really low, high concentration of color, lots of flavor, still retaining ripened acidity while developing the sugar and the flavor. So we're able to pick it at a higher, I guess, higher Brix, higher ripeness, but still maintain that fresh acidity. So it became a pretty big wine. And that freshness really not only demands some level of aging, because if we release it within a year or two, it would just be super tart. So we end up kind of developing the style of long aging Barbera, where we age it for about 5 years. So the bottle that you have in hand is 2013, and that is our current release. 8 years is year old. I did not give you a library wine. So in 2018, we bottled it, and we held on it for a few more years until we released it in last year, I think late last year, earlier this year.
So you're actually holding it in barrel for 5 years, holding it in barrel for 5 years, bottling it, and then holding it in bottle for a couple of years before going in. Okay, so you're kind of following like I mean, it's Italian. I know Spanish better. Crianza Reserva method, whatever is the equivalent
in
Italy.
Yeah, people have been telling us, it's like, oh, you should have called it Gran Reserva or whatever. And I was like, well, it's not like we have another one that is younger and ready to be released or anything like that. We just make the wine in the way that it make the most sense for the grapes, for what it is, right? And if 5 years is what it takes, and 5 years what it takes.
So that's my next question is, so when you're keeping it in barrel for that long, what is the evolution you see in the barrel? So you finish fermentation, you're going to put it in barrel. Take me through the evolution of that wine to where you're like, yep, we're ready to bottle.
It is actually quite remarkable. I was not a believer of it myself, right? In the beginning, I was like, can't we just bottle it sooner and just wait later or whatever? And I think the evolution is quite transformative. For one, the acid is real high. So if you taste it, or if you take it to the lab rather, the pH is somewhere between 3.2, if not lower. So last year, 2012 vintage, I think we were looking at 3.0, which is, but in context, right? This is like the level of, like, say, white wine, or even sometimes like sparkling wine level, and this coupled with sugar level that support, if I don't know, the bottle may not say this exactly, but the alcohol is about 17%.
All right, let's see if I can see what it says.
Bottle might say something slightly different.
Well, we know the legals, right? So you're allowed that one.
Eh,
What percentage did you say this is?
17.
Okay, so all right. Well,
Don't read
this
it. Don't
says
read it. It might be lower. I think partly because here, and this is the thing that we did not even realize was happening, an unintended consequence, so to speak, is that California, the weather is super dry. So when you age something for that long, evaporation happens, and we have to keep topping. And depends on what's the concentrate, what the humidity is. Sometimes the thing that also evaporates the alcohol, so
right.
it's in balance. But in this environment that we have, only water evaporates, alcohol stays. So every year when we top more wine, we just inevitably add more alcohol to it. So my estimation is that we increase about 0.5% every year. So
Okay.
when the fermentation finished, it was in fact roughly 15%. Like when we work it out by the bricks, right? It should have been 15%, but by the end of 5 years, it ended up being about 17%. So
Okay.
therefore, that
And is this Barbera 100% Barbera?
it is.
It is. And is all of your Barberas that I have right here, these all 100%?
Are all 100%. Another thing that we've learned through working with Barbera a lot is that Barbera doesn't like to blend with other wines. I'm not sure if
Oh,
you're doing it.
it's an
But
only child? It likes to
it's
be an only child?
not a team player. Yeah, it's not like Carignan or other things that always make other people better. Rather just obscure other people, or like other people don't. I know somehow we try many times, and very very rare occasions that it blends well. Most of the time it doesn't. So what we learned throughout the years is that we can blend a little bit of other vintage. Barbera just really like to blend with itself.
Okay.
Right, so we can use a drop or two of a different vintage to give it somewhat other dimensions. But and because we always do it below 5%, we never had to declare it. Just sort of our secret thing here.
I
Except,
think that's not so much it might be a secret to listeners, but I don't think that's a secret to winemakers. I think that's a very common thing to be done. You take the newest vintage and add 4%, makes a
exactly.
little
Yes. I love to hear that other people use that as a common now. But I've decided another bottle I gave it to you is the Latatas.
yeah. So this one cracked me up when I saw it. So there has got to be a story behind
There is.
this
Okay,
label.
so the story of the label real quick is that we always partner. We have a foundation, a breast cancer foundation, Solano Midnight Sun, our local county level foundation here that we work with for years. And that's their logo. And we came up with this fun name called La Tatas. It's always a blend of some kind that we blend together to support them. So the proceeds from that wine goes to help fight breast cancer. Okay, so that aside, this year, instead of doing a traditional blend of different varietals, I have decided I'm gonna actually go crazy on the vintage blending. Right, and it says in there it's 16, 19, and 21 vintages together. And because of this, when we were sitting together and trying to do this blend, we added 5%, and it's great. I was like, well, what if we actually like keep going? Let's just keep going. And it just kept getting better and better. So I was like, forget the vintage, just do a
Right.
multi-vintage, non-vintage style, right? Because I think that technique is used a lot in Europe. Like people do that for champagne, people do that for I don't know what other regions does it more routinely. But like I don't think we should really limit ourselves to a vintage just because the law says so.
Right. All you have to do is take the vintage off and all's good, right?
Exactly right.
So but this is interesting that you can do that because of how you make your Barbera. Because typically speaking, an average winery would, let's say 2013, right? They would be bottling in 2015.
Right. And you wouldn't have
Generally speaking.
more than 2 years to play with. Right.
Right. But since you're holding your Barbera for 5 years in barrel, you have like an automatic playground there that you can just have so much fun with.
Exactly. That's what I decided, that I'm going to step outside the box and just, because one thing that Doug, my wine father, taught me, right, and I take this to heart, is that our only obligation is to make good wine. And like, I am not obligated to the government to like stick with a vintage. Like, no one, that's if sticking to a vintage make bad wine, then why bother? Like,
I like that. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I'm curious, when you went to go make this, right? So this is 2016, 19, and 21. So in a normal blending world, right? Even if it's 100% Barbera, you've got different barrels and you're tasting from this barrel, this barrel, this barrel, and you put them together to your best blend of the best barrels, maybe 10% of this barrel, 60% of this barrel. But now you've got vintages and you've got multiple vintages that you could have tasted through in order to do that. So what made 16, 19, and 21 the trifecta for La
well,
Tatas?
16 is our sort of the oldest one that we have, and that's kind of
Okay.
like, it's really mature, but the maturity like come with like chocolate notes, yeah, because it was, we always use neutral French oak, but even if it's neutral, spend enough time in it, it will develop some kind of more that chocolate covered cherries kind of flavor. So that by itself is really nice, and I actually do have a single 16 bottling that I love myself as well. But I feel like it can definitely benefit from something fresh. So 19 is one of our lightest years, because it was warmer and we were forced to pick slightly earlier. So I think that at first I was just going to do 16 and 19, just the two vintage together. But then maybe this is an accident, but I just happened to have like the 19, the barrel was low and I needed to top it. And and after I was pressing 21, I was like, I'm gonna put the 21 in there, probably gonna be good. And it turns out really good. So I just kept going.
Some of the best inventions are found, actually the majority of great inventions are found by accident, right?
Right.
It's just
Necessity is the mother of invention. So that's
there
kind of,
you go. Right. So that is exciting. And so the Breast Cancer Society, that the Solano Midnight
Lotto
Sun
Midnight Sun.
Foundation,
Mhm.
how many cases of this do you produce?
That particular one is only 15.
15 cases.
Very tiny.
And then are you selling this out of the tasting room and the proceeds go, or are you giving them the wine
We
as
sell the former. We sell at the tasting room, and the proceed goes. We actually have one of the board members of the organizations also come and help volunteer at our tasting room. So they also love wine, and that's what we love. It's a bit of a community that we have going on. They can convey the message much better than I would, about the foundations, and and the tips that people actually give at the tasting room also goes to the foundation as well.
very nice, very nice. So I'm going to backtrack a bit because your like resume is outrageous. So I mean, you are PhD in biostatistics from Harvard and computational biology and Stanford University is biostatistics. Like that's incredible. Like I know what biostatistic is, but I'm a biologist and I don't know what computational biology is. So what is computational biology?
That is so cool. I even before, when I applied to biostats, PhD, I did not know what biostats was. I actually knew what comp bio was before. But there are, okay, this is such a shift in gear, but let's do it. So there are three words, three disciplines, I guess, that people can label what I do in what I study. One is bioinformatics, another one is computational biology, another one is biostatistics, and they're all overlapping greatly. Similar to like how people say like data science versus statistics versus machine learning versus AI, right? So these are all just data analysis, data mining in the context of biology. And I can call myself any of those three things, but computational biology was born out of the realization that biological sciences has now generated a lot of data that human cannot simply sift through it by eyes or by simple like Excels, and you need a real mathematical and computational tool to address it. And this came first from genetics. So as we completed human genomes and the cost of sequencing and reading the genome got a lot lower, we needed people to be able to write programs and do more sophisticated data analysis on it, therefore computational biology. But the focus of it is more on the biological side. So we just look at computational tool as a tool. So as opposed to using pipette and PCR, I use my like data analysis to at the genome. I used to work at 23andMe, genetic testing company, and that's a great example of how statistics, computational biology, machine learning is used in genetics as a way to combine a lot of data together.
That is pretty cool. So I'm a undergrad and master's degree in biology, so I absolutely love it and I get it. And the genetics is my favorite aspect of it. I think it's very cool to know that one little tweak can make such a difference in, in the end result. And that wraps me back to wine, believe it or not, right? Where one little tweak makes a difference. And that's how we get these clones or, these mutations that come about. So do you pull that, your biological aspect, your biology background into the winemaker as you're walking through the vineyards and things like that?
I do. Yeah, one thing I appreciate and love about being a second generation is that Doug, my wine father, has kept a really good record of all of their fermentations over 25 years. So I have 25 vintage of data in some of the wine, in some cases just a single varietal, single vineyard that gone back decades. So I can always look back and see what decision they had made. Have we seen this pattern, like in terms of pH and sugar and ripeness before? What decision was made then? Were they happy with it? And in some years they made several, 5, 6, 7, 8 fermentations. So there are like, I think at this point, like over 100 fermentations data point I can look back to. And it was kept in like a long running docx file, right?
Oh, well, that's better than I thought. I know some winemakers that are still using the black and white speckled, college ruled notebook.
Not quite. I do have like a master like notebook, like actual handwriting notebook that's gone back again over 10 years. So that's more like a secret Bible, that sacred Bible, like you can worship that one. But he always transcribed it back to a digital form. So I spent time kind of like coding it into an Excel sheets and actually plot it out, and I can plot multiple vintages on top of each other to see like what's the average length of fermentation, what's the average temperatures and things like that, and what yeast did we use, were we happy with it, that kind of decisions as well.
Wow. So when you legit can look at like what that growing season is and relate it to maybe a previous vintage and see, okay, well, we brought it in at this pH, this Brix level, and it resulted in this end product. Well, I'm going to take that end product and I want to do this to it. So I can figure out, well, you can figure out how to tweak what that what that harvest geekiness is, right? The pH and bricks and all of that stuff, tweak it to almost predict what you're going to end up with.
And I think also correlate that with the living record, right? Where I just get on a call with Doug and Costco and say, hey, Doug, like that year look a lot like this. Do you remember liking it? Like, you have done it again. Like, and sometimes he's like, no, that was a mistake or whatever. Like,
Right. No,
it's like,
no.
that's
We
the
want to
common
skip that vintage. No, no, don't make it like that vintage. Make it like this vintage, right? Absolutely. So that's really kind of cool. That really is bringing the science in to the craft of winemaking, and it sort of reminds me of like Moneyball with baseball, right? It's like you have these athletes who can do whatever they do, but then it was the statistician who was able to figure
Right.
out
Now, I
which.
don't, that's true, but that, like, I always kind of caution that. I think at our level, tiny micro wineries, it is more of an art than it is a science. You might agree with it, right? And the science really is a guide or like a starting point.
Right.
When you brought in fruit, you really have nothing else to work off of other than your past experience. So you kind of start with something, and then but beyond that, we just nothing replaces being with the grapes, tasting the wine as it goes, and make that on the at the moment decisions of what to do.
Right. But I think that good decision making is based on past experience.
Yes.
And if you have the ability to have the statistics of somebody else's past experience, right? Like it's like adding to your own experience
Yes.
without you physically have been there to gain
Yes.
that experience.
Yes, exactly. It's really nice. And I built that memory to myself as well now that I see a few fermentations, right? And I can say it's like, yeah, if it looks like this, my prediction is that it's going to be extracted. It's just going to be light. It's going to be a certain way. So I can now like look at the fermentation curve and kind of have a guess about what may have happened then.
Right, right. You can form an educated hypothesis,
Right.
an educated guess of what is going to occur. Doesn't mean that Mother Nature is going to allow that to occur, or that, nothing. I don't want to say the bad word during fermentation, but that right. I mean,
Right, right.
right. There's always the nuances of new things popping up that
Um,
whatever, but.
Definitely.
That's interesting. So let's talk about this 2013 Barbera that I have in my glass. So obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but 2013, I'm guessing this is not your your wine.
This is not my one. No, this one I inherited. It was there before I came in, and my job is to study it to the best I can and try to get close to it, right? But again, that's something I admire and love and try to study intently. The one tidbit about this vineyard is that we've been making that since 1997, 1998, I think the first vintage, in fact. And the first experience we had with the vineyard is that it was a second crop. It was not a first crop. Some Castello di Morosa or Mondavi at the time had taken it, but they yield enough second crops that we could pick a month afterward, and has still completely balanced chemistry and maturity and flavors. And that we've gone back in the subsequent years, and in some years we actually able to get access to the first crop as well. But because it was the second crop, it also taught us that it could be left to hang for much longer than one might have thought. So one of the tidbits about it is that the previous other winery had made wine from that vineyard before, may have picked it sort of the classic Barbera style, like no more than 23, 24 bricks, and ripping high alcohol, high acid. And they're never really that happy with it. Like Mondavi discontinued the program, for example, because you're trying to use this to make into a Italian style wine. But we learned that it doesn't want to be an Italian style Barbera. It wants to be something else, and we just allow it to be what it is. And I think that's also become a foundation of our winemaking philosophies in general, is to not try to impose our will of what the grape should be, and just learn to listen to it. Right.
That's an important thing because you can't force it to be whatever you want it to be. It's going to buck you every way, right? It's going to be like a wild horse bucking off the saddle. I don't want to be that. I'm not an Italian Barbera because I'm not in Italy. I'm not, the soils are different. The climate is different. My growing season is different. Everything is different. I don't want to be that. Let me be and I will shine for you, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's our job, is to listen and try to do what it wants to be. And now I've every vintage is different, right? Although it's the same vineyard, you might sometimes still need to work with whatever it is. Yeah.
So tell us about the 2013. What are your, what would be your expression or your explanation to somebody? I definitely the cherry. And one of the things, and see, I am going to say it is kind of a little Italian Barbera, because the thing that I always get with Barbera is those candies. It's like the chocolate gumdrop shaped thing with the cherry in it, and when you bite it's got some cherry juice in it.
Oh yeah.
I don't
Yes.
know what the name of those candies are.
Yeah, but I know what you
Mon
mean.
Cherie or some weird name like that. But
Right.
that to me is Barbera.
Yes, and that is like max, like that multiplies and concentrate into it, right? So this is a explosion of that flavor, and I like that analogy of kind of biting into something and it explodes in your mouth in a way. So that's just a lot of fruit to start with, and then the evolution of it really is that the just like other wines, in the beginning is really fruity but it's fresh, right? And it's kind of light and fresh in your palate, but then as it ages in the barrel, it concentrates down and intensifies and become, like you say, more like compote, or more like syrup, like but not in a sweet
Not
way.
the sweet, right? No.
The concentration part of it. That and licorice is another word that a lot of people use, and some people even find kind of mittens, kind of a bit more of that leathery mature-ness to it. I personally see more like almond taste because of that aging period that is in there.
That I think might be a difference between the Italian and the California. Is I agree with you, more that almondy, the leather, that earth, I think more Italian, older Italian.
Yeah, and sometimes I feel like the Italians don't get only very few places in Italy that has the benefit of doing a long aging of Barbera. Because it usually lost its spot to Nebbiolo. Yeah, but I think Barbera, if anything, this hopefully shows it is worthy of aging, worthy of care, if you allow it to.
So I have 3 Barberas here, and I know you've got some sneaky Barberas down there below you. So first, before telling us what else of Barbera you got, what is it about Barbera? Why is it so near and dear
Right.
to Sunset?
Yes. So for me and as winemakers, we love that the acid is high.
Okay.
And it's so weird. When I was a consumer, never thought about wine as acidic, or never really think about acid as being an integral part of wine, right? But I feel like as winemaker, as we kind of right now, as we walk the vineyards and playing with the fire, waiting for the development of flavors and sugar to go, we always watching for the acid to not drop. And but Barbera is one of those that it can hang on to its acid even long into the growing season. So, for example, we make a rosé of Barbera, and usually people pick rosé, and we picked it for the purpose of it being rosé, not a sangria. So people usually pick rosé right around now because they want the acid to be like low 3 pH. But like we pick our Barbera late September for rosé because
Wow.
because we monitor the acid. Like we care less about sugar, we care less about other things like acids and flavors are the two that we kind of looked at for the Barbera for the rosé here. So we just basically kept waiting for it to be below like 3, like to be above rather 3.2, and it took that long for it to go.
When do you typically pick the Barbera for the red
The
program?
red, the October,
October, okay.
the early October.
Early October. Okay, so it is kind of so it's a middle ripener.
Yes, yes.
Middle
So
ripener.
the variation, for example, was about 2 weeks ago. So it's a little bit later than like middle, but yeah, not late per se, but middle.
Okay. Okay.
What else? So I make rosé from it. I make a regular red Barbera. And I made a port style late harvest Barbera from it. So I have a little stubby bottle here. And yeah, so again, for the same exact reason, you can actually, because of the acid is so high, you can let it hang and make it into a great dessert wine that still has such freshness. And the acid balances the sugar so well that people don't feel that it's cloying. So that's one of the problems of, at least for me, some of the port is that it's just so thick and syrupy and cloying. But this one you can drink really easily, and still feel the fruit, the freshness of the wine. It's really is a wine that like it sells itself whenever like when I only made a barrel of it. And whenever every time I pour it, it sells. So it's like I never have to do any marketing for it.
So you're going through your vineyard for 3 passes for Barbera?
No, so no, not really. So we actually have a different vineyard for the rosé.
Okay.
And for the late harvest, we do that once every 2 years. In some years that we have good yield, we might hold back a row or two to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so the pour is not an all the time.
Not an all the time thing, although it's been so popular, I feel like I need to try to do it all the time.
So people need to get into the tasting room or get online and place an order before it disappears.
It already did. I mean,
Oh, it's already disappeared. Oh, well, you snooze, you lose, people.
Yes, but when I do it next time, please
Yes.
come fast.
Yes. Get on the wait list for it. So now you also produce daylight saving. Okay. This is Barbera. Surprise, surprise. Oh, and you just said it is a piquette. So tell us.
Yes. So piquette, in case people never had or never heard of it, it is a retro modern thing. It's something that people only really rediscover recently. But it's something that European farm workers and vineyard workers has been doing it even to today. But since the ancient Roman time, I think, there are records of it, and it's come in different names. Piquette is one, a French name for it, but some people call it Aquarello. There are other names. Basically, a second press after you make the first red wine or primary wine. So, for example, if you make, we made Barbera, we press it off, still has a lot of flavor and sugar and alcohol left. So you can actually pour a little bit of water in there, press it a second time, and get about half of the alcohol out. So we got between 7 to 9% alcohol, full flavor, actually a lot of aromas that really consistent with the primary wine. But because it's sort of a water, made from water additions, it's actually a lot lighter. So it drinks like beer, but it tastes like wine. And the instigation for this is that when I live in California, right, and we all go hiking sometimes, lots of great hike. I always wanted to bring something to drink to reward myself at the end of a hike, but I'm never able to bring wine because you're not going to carry a bottle. So I decided instead of just keep drinking beer, I'm gonna make something I can go hike with. And like, so I put in can, carbonated, so it's a little bit sparkling.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Lower alcohol, really light, so it's really portable. And it's completely dry, so there's no sugar.
And do you make other varieties in the
I
can?
do. I do. So this is the first year that I made it. We call it daylight saving. I'm really proud of the name. Because it's for daytime wine. We made 5 varieties: Zinfandel, Syrah, Petit Syrah, Pinot Noir, and Barbera. And just because I have those 5 varietals and it's gonna make it, so
Are they all piquettes?
yes. So yeah. So as in we make red wine from those, and I decided to piquette for all 5 of them as well. So we have sort of corresponding piquettes. Yeah.
Very cool. And so, tell us, how did you come up with the name? You said you're very proud of daylight savings time.
Yeah. So I mean, daylight saving, because it's a light wine that we envision for a daytime activity, right? So it's daylight, and daylight saving, just a phrase that people always use, and it's saving of the leftover grapes.
Dual purpose, dual.
Therefore,
Very nice. Very nice. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed that it wasn't already taken, because you would think that
beer. There's a brewery in the East Coast that does their daylight saving IPA or something like that.
oh,
So
but that doesn't matter, right?
that's okay. Yeah,
yeah.
not wine. No one has done daylight saving wine yet. So we have a website, daylightsaving.wine.
Oh, okay. So is this sold? It's sold actually as its own entity. It's got its own website.
Yeah. So for 2 reasons. One is that because it's such a different wine, that doesn't necessarily fits the portfolio or identity of Sunset, right? So I didn't want it to kind of confuse our main customer to think that it's going to be consistent with the classic Sunset wine. But also I see that as having a potential to become its own category of things. Therefore it has its own website, but we drive the sales and the legal side of it through Sunset.
Sunset. Right. Well, I will say it's smart to separate it right at the beginning then, because it's tough to separate after the fact. It's more difficult to do that, so you could always drive it in that direction. But I like the idea. There's a lot of people who are anti-cans, and I'm one of those believers of there's a time and place for it. If I'm sitting down, and I haven't tasted this, so I can't say either way, but in my brain, if I'm sitting down and enjoying a nice dinner around a table with friends or family or whatever, I'm not popping a can of wine, right? I'm opening a bottle of wine.
Exactly.
Right. But as you said, when we're out hiking or we're at the beach or, at a pool or whatever, where you're there and it's a more casual feeling, a more casual relaxation thing, and you're worried about the glass, you're worried about, it's, that's where these come in. And the fact that I think the quality of these have come a long way in the past years.
Yes. And also, I didn't just, at least daylight saving wine is come in a can, but it's not just taking a bottle, a wine that would put it in a bottle and put in a can. It's not just an alternative packaging, but for me, it's actually important that I connote the right application, and the wine itself is also fitting with the packaging. Right. So it's either wine, it literally drink like beer. It probably should be packaged like beer.
Right. And that actually is another point, that you really can't just take wine that is bottled wine and put it in a can. It's a different, it's a different entity.
I've learned so much from doing this, actually, that one of the main problems in the early days of canned wine is reductive, right? So it's always a bit like smells like matchsticks or something, and like, of course you can kind of decant it away, or if you let it air, but that doesn't fit with the format. Like can, you just want to crack and drink it, and it's
Right.
people like, oh, why does it smells weird? Because it has no oxygen transfer whatsoever. When you put it in the can, it's done.
Right.
So you cannot rely on the reduction dissipating from aging or bottle shock for that matter. So the parameters around free and total SO2 is kind of ridiculous. It's like required total SO2 to be below 60, free to be below 10, like super low.
Wow.
Like,
Right, because wine is a living thing, right? And in the bottle, it's like you said, it's kind of aging, or not kind of, it is aging, right? It's got the microoxygenation that's occurring that the wine evolves while it's in bottle. This not so much.
yeah, no, can not so much. Therefore, like, I don't think there would ever be a day where we put like super premium wine that would age for decades in a can. That's just not what it's for.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So to each its own place. And I like the idea that there's other opportunities to enjoy wine in different locales and different areas. I just think you kind of have to know that it's a different beast, and you can't, you can't judge a German Shepherd versus a Chihuahua, right? Like,
Right.
they're two entities, they're two completely different things, or, German Shepherd versus a polar bear or something, right? They're two different things. They're meant for two different things. So, um, so where can people find Sunset Cellars?
Yes, they can find us online at sunsetsellers.com. And you can also, but if you live or travel to Northern California or Napa Valley area, would love to see you at our tasting room. So you can look up Sunset Cellars, but we share a tasting room with two other wineries as part of the Suisun Valley Wine Co-op. So if curious about Suisun Valley, the great place that hidden gem that we are, please come visit, and we'd love to see you. Definitely send me personally a note and you say Lori sent you. I will make sure to find time to be able to meet you.
And that's when they come in. The thing about Sassoon is you're really on just the opposite side of Napa. So anybody who is coming to visit Napa, Sonoma, is probably actually closer Napa to Sassoon than Napa to Sonoma, right?
Yes, actually, if you're in downtown Napa, it's actually only about 15 minutes to 30 minutes drive away.
Right.
So really just a hop. And there's a highway in between, pretty beautiful ride. Actually, I go there all the time.
Mm. And at the co-op, there's 3 wineries, so you can come in. Can you come in under you and taste the other 2 wineries, or is
Yes.
everybody appointment only? How does that
No,
work?
no, it's actually no appointment required. That's one of
Okay.
the cool thing about Susun is that we're not that busy yet. So open, and we're open Wednesday through Sunday, so only really closed Monday and Tuesday. So fairly many hours to choose from. The way the co-op works is that we actually pour wine for everyone. So when you do a tasting list, tasting flight, you get to sample 2 or 3 wines from each winery.
Oh, okay. So the flight itself is varied with the 3 wineries. You don't
Exactly.
have to go taste here, then taste here, then taste here.
It's a part. If you insist that you only want to taste sunset, which I appreciate, we can also we can also cater the flight that way.
Okay.
But I appreciate having diversity of winemaking styles in the same house, and you can kind of learn from the differences between wine that way. And that's again how I came to be a consumer, as I learned the differences that way.
And you are on social media also, correct?
Yes, I am. So you can also look us up at Instagram or Facebook under Sunset Sellers. If you're interested in following me personally, I have my Instagram, Fah Wine, and you can find links to other wineries that I am involved with through that as well.
Okay, perfect. And I always have to ask, is there anything that I missed that you feel people should know about you yourself or about Sunset?
Mm. Well, I think without going too deep into the Japan side, I think we are also
Oh, yes, yes. Please tell us about that because that's kind of that is a unique situation.
it is the winery is as diverse as the winemaker. The we also have a pretty deep connection to Japan and Asia in general. So one of the two founders of the winery, Cusco, is Japanese, and us second generation, my husband is Japanese, and our partners is also Japanese. So we actually have a pretty deep connection with that side. So we have decided that we would explore sort of our connection with Japan and have a Japan market. So we exported a number of wine to our wine club over there. And this is sort of a fun innovation on our side where we basically cut out the middleman, the importer, exporter, and sell directly to our customers and able to deliver great wine with great connections for them. And so I think like innovations in wine can happen at multiple levels, and we're pretty proud of the fact that we are cutting through that as well. Yeah.
And you could probably teach a lot of other people how to do that because it would be a beautiful thing if we can cut through some of that red tape and tiers that do everything else from us.
Exactly. If you are an owner of another winery and would love to talk to you about how we do it, and if we can collaborate together on exploring that market, because I think that's in general, customer love it. We deliver great value to our customers. If you ever travel abroad, right, and if you look at some of our like American wine abroad, is kind of depressing, like how much some of the basic super cheap bottles of wine here would end up costing when it end up abroad. So so we're able to help with that a little bit as well. And I think maybe last thing I wanted to talk about is because of that connection with Asia, diversity in wine is a pretty big part of my personal social mission. It's about 2 years ago in 2020, when all of the social things are going around, and look around and find myself realizing that was the only one that's not white, like around here. And then come to realize that I needed to do something about it. So obviously, in addition to working with a lot of great talents that are of BIPOC community, I'm also pretty actively involved with the Asian Wine Professionals group. So every May we organize the AAPI Heritage Month activities. And now we're about to organize a formal organization around Asian wine professionals and able to raise money and support bringing awareness and support careers of young professionals in our group as well.
Oh, well, kudos to you. That's fantastic. I love it. That is fantastic. That is. But I don't know. You are a whirlwind. You are all over the place. You have your background is stunning, to say the least. And I love talking to somebody who has pure passion. Like, it's always nice to talk to somebody who has pure passion for wine. I mean, nobody's on this podcast who doesn't have a passion for wine, but to have a passion for a specific varietal is up, that's my jam. Like when somebody can, 2 feet in, full out for a specific variety, that is great. And the fact that it's not Cab or it's not Pinot or Chardonnay. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those grape varieties, but there's so many varieties out there that need a little love, that need to show, that need a spokesperson to show how great they are. And so thank you for doing that for Barbera.
Thank you. Well, thanks to you for Cat Franc, and I'm always a fan of yours too.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot to me. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, and I appreciate you sharing your wines with me and your knowledge. And so I always raise my glass and I will say slancha. I don't know how you say cheers in
Hi,
Thai.
Chayo.
Chayo.
Yes.
All right, so chayo. I stick to my little slancha, but thank you for coming on and sharing your wines and Barbera and knowledge.
Thank you. All
Have a
right.
great day.
You too.